of the SJCA, as well as a trustee of the Cape Town Holocaust and Genocide Foundation. She also is the chair of for the Chief Rabbi C.K. Harris Memorial Foundation and a member of the SABOD Cape Council, and has 2 sons, 6 grandchildren, and one who she is proud as he serves as a lone soldier in the RDF, and 2 great-grandchildren. And again, a warm welcome to you, a busy, remarkable lady. Thank you for being with us this evening on what I've already mentioned I understand for me to be a historic event and to be able to link our communities. We wish you much health and a Shana Tova and Metuka. Looking forward to your greetings.
Thank you. I feel quite moved by this marvelous occasion because, as you said, the one good thing that COVID has done for us is that we can get together more easily technologically, where we've never been able to do this before. The only way I have been able to keep in touch with the African Jewish Congress members in 8 countries has been by emails and occasional visits, and when we have had a biannual conference. So to be able to see so many people and so many lovely friends from the country communities is a real treat. For me, it's an honor and a great pleasure. And I thank you for asking me. I have to tell you about my involvement with the AJC and the Small Jewish Communities of South Africa organization. I don't do anything. I just have ideas. The one that does the work is Rav Moshe. And I know you all know that. And I just want to pay tribute to him and to wish him a especially good year, because we're starting on all kinds of new projects and it's going to be very hard work. And all I will do is sit on the other end of the Zoom and criticize. So I think that's very important to remember. I just want to tell you for a minute about the amazing things that some of our countries do. I saw Sam Levy there a minute ago. Sam lives, he's not there now because he got locked down, but he normally lives in Maputo in Mozambique. And he has put together the most marvelous, small, vibrant community of young people with children. And nothing stops him from putting together activities for them, of organizing Shabbatot. He's always got plans for the future. He's actually remarkable. And I count on Sam as my right hand for this to be made about the AJC, because he's very hands-on with it all. So that's Mozambique. I don't know whether Owen Griffiths is here from Mauritius, but you probably all know that we have...
Yes, I'm here. Good evening, everyone. Erev Tov.
Hi. Owen, I want you to take a bow as the one who not only masterminded the creation of the Detainees Museum, which is beside the Beaubassin Cemetery, where so many Jews, 127 Jews who were in exile on Mauritius were buried. And not only that, but what's interesting about what Owen does is we all have to watch how our communities deal with Israel and with anti-Semitism, and sometimes it's very difficult. Owen is never backward in coming forward. He's there all the time with letters and calls and making friends with people, and it's actually really remarkable that he's able to
I'm back here again. Some slight technical problems. I'm sorry.
Oh dear. Well, I was just saying how marvelous you are, Owen. So there you are. They know. It's great. Right.
All right. Thank you.
I also wanted to mention Zambia. I don't think we're being joined by the Zambians. The reason I want to mention them is, first of all, they've got a very solid body of Israelis now. And they're actually under the most difficult circumstances mounting Yomim Noraim services. And they really are quite remarkable in what they can do. They're not easy to deal with, I have to tell you, these Israelis, but they really got it, you know, that when they want something, they go for it. What I wanted to tell you about Zambia was that you may not know, but it's the place from which the largest proportion in Africa of Olim went to Israel from the very early days onwards. And thanks to them, we've been able to create the link between the Copperbelt University in Zambia, in a place called Ndola, with the Tel Aviv University. The two medical schools are twinned and work together, and that was funded entirely by the Zambia Jewish community. And good luck to them. There's not many of them, but they've done very well. The one I would like to mention with a great deal of sympathy at the moment, but I want everybody should know this, is Zim. Are you there, Yossi? I know you're there somewhere. When I think about what our communities are like, I know that the one which has the most traditional base still functions, however difficult it is Zimbabwe. And in Harare and Bulawayo. In Harare, it's Yossi Kabli that keeps it going, it's really remarkable that he, as I say, keeps a semblance of normality which larger places can't do, and particularly as they're in a very difficult political situation often, and certainly just now.
Thank you, Anne.
And then I don't know, is anybody here from Namibia? Whose doggy is it?
Viva, can you mute everybody, please?
Whose doggy is it? No, I'm a great dog lover. You can send him, her here. And the Namibians, I'm not sure whether there's anybody here, but they are a very small community. And yet they are forging away at mounting Holocaust education in their country. And that's not easy, because you have to remember that Namibia was once a German colony. Mm-hmm. And yet they work away at it. Unfortunately, the virus has stopped us from moving on more quickly, but they're certainly there working on it. I hope I haven't missed anybody out who's here, but it's really wonderful to work with these people. You know, at one time, I used to say, it's easy to be a Jew in a big community. If you live in Johannesburg or London or New York or Ranana, it's not difficult to be Jewish. You have every facility and you have every level of Judaism to suit you. And I always used to think, and still do, that for those who preserve their Jewish identity in our small communities, both inside and outside South Africa, where it's not so easy, do a remarkable job. The funny thing now is that the virus, the COVID virus, has actually reversed it a little bit, because in the big centers, they have got Soros up to their ears with lockdowns still, and infections and difficulties of going to work and so on and so forth. And so much so that it looks in many places as if Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur will be non-events. But it is, despite the efforts of the rabbis, it's very difficult indeed. Whereas in the small places where the infection has been there, but it hasn't been so rife because the borders have been closed, they're forging ahead and making Yom Tov worthwhile. And I give them every congratulation. It's really very good indeed. There is a reversal of the ideas. Right, so let me finish with this. I'm not a rabbi, and I'm really glad I'm not a rabbi. So if I do a little religious bit, you'll have to forgive me if it's all not quite right. I've noticed the last week or so that I've been swamped with online New Year cards, all of which wish me and other recipients a sweet and happy year, or a sweet and good year. And I've been thinking about it, and I don't think that this year that is what we should be saying to people, because we don't just want it sweet, and we don't just want it good, and we just don't want it happy. We want to be able to deal with all kinds of difficulties that we're not quite sure of. We don't even know how to do it. We have to fight for survival. So what we should be praying for, in my view, is strength and wisdom to make decisions that we never had to make before, and resilience to cope with all kinds of challenges that we're not used to. And in addition to those of us who live in very small places, whom Rabbi Moshe represents nearly all of them, there is the view that all of us have to be working out how to take our place among our fellow citizens, because so many of them are a great deal worse off than we are. So that's all. I just want to say, when you are saying your prayers, if you get a chance over the Yomim Noraim, two things to remember. If you say Selichot, I remember a little girl in the first shul where my late husband was the rabbi in London many, many years ago. And a little girl, when she was asked, what are Selichot? What does it mean? And she put her hand up and she said, saying your sorry prayers. And perhaps we should remember that, saying that sorry to all of the people that we may have injured in some way, all of the bad thoughts, all of the things that we ought to be doing. And that's that. And my last wish for you, and not so much for a happy and sweet year, although I do wish you that, is to also remember that during the period of the Chagim, we read the Psalm 146 every day. It's not one that we don't normally do. It's just for those few weeks. And its last line tells us not to be happy and not to be religious and not to be clever. Be strong and of good courage. Please remember that. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne, for those beautiful words. Honestly, strength and wisdom, as you say. And with that, we're going to be moving on to our next speaker. Barney, if you can share your screen.
I'm here.
Welcome, Barney. Thank you. There we can see you. I just would like to remind everybody, for the best enjoyment on today's event, if you go on to speaker view, that's the best view that you will have. Well, a good welcome, Barney. And Barney is the current chairperson of the Small Jewish Communities Association of South Africa, as well as the chairman of the Giddutzland West Hebrew Congregation in Kimberley. And I hope I've said the word correctly. So, born in Kimberley in 1953, he grew up in the town, attended school at the St. Patrick's CBC in the city, and graduated from Rhodes University, Grahamstown, with an LLB degree in 1977. And has practiced law ever since. He's married to Maud Horwitz, and they have 3 adult children, Ida, Roy, and Jury. Barney has a long history in communal life, having served as on the board on the local Chevra Kadisha since 1988 and on the Shul committee since 1998. He and another Kimberley congregant, Barney Katz, share the services during the year. He's also the chairman of the Board of Governors of the St. Patrick's CBC and the trustee of the Premier Education Trust. He describes himself as a proud Jew and essentially family man whose wife, children, and children-in-law are his universe. Lovely said. Anyway,
Thank you.
again, a warm welcome. Tell us a
Thank
little about Kimberley and say that word for me so that I know that I've said it correctly.
Griqualand West.
Griqualand.
Griqualand West Hebrew congregation.
Okay.
Teddy, thank you for the warm welcome. Anne, thank you for the wonderful words of introduction to set the tone for this evening. Rabbi Moshe, for being the glue that keeps Judaism in Africa alive. And to all of you,
should listen to yourself.
may I continue? Yeah. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. You're good. Keep going.
Thank you. To all of you, a great big thank you. I was born in a biggish country community at the time. I've lived in a small country community and small country communities my entire life. So the ability to look at the world as a Jew who has been on an island is far greater than many who've lived in the cities. Now, the year that we have just been through has probably been the most traumatic in the last 70 years, but it has taught us as Jews something very special. And that is that actually we are not an island. We who live in the small communities have always had to interact with all of those people around us. In the larger centers and in Israel, probably is that whatever our differences as human beings, whatever background we come from, whatever race, whatever religion, we actually face the same challenges. And that is my message for Rosh Hashanah this year, that as we gather together where we can gather together, and as we seek wisdom and look at our own lives, it is worth remembering that we belong to a very big world, and that whoever we are, Hashem does not discriminate when the news is bad or the news is good. We're all in the same boat, and we must all move together in that way. Our food that we eat at this time of the year is so symbolic. The round challah, the symbol of completeness, and that is what we need to look at in our communities. One of the interesting challenges that has come out this year, and that Anne has alluded to, is the fact that the small communities have come into their own throughout South Africa, in that we have been able to continue with communal life to a far greater extent than people in very large communities. In a large communities, you cannot allow more than 50 of your congregants to come to shul at any one given time. We can allow 100% of our congregants to come to shul. When there are seven or eight of you in a 300-seater shul, social distancing is not difficult. In fact, this year we have had far more interest from larger centers in people wanting to come to us for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur than we've had in 10 or 20 years. One of the things that we do during Rosh Hashanah, and this year we do it on second day and not first day, is Tashlicht. And the reasoning that why do we have water and why do we have fish, it really resonated with me when I read about it again this year in preparing not only this message, but the message that I write for the local newspaper every day. are considered to be the same. And fish cannot survive without water, and Jews cannot survive without Torah. And I think that this is a very big message. In difficulty and isolation, many people have suffered severe mental illness. And I put that down to instances being unable to communicate with the balance of their community, to interact with other people. And it's at that time that you realize that even if you sit at home and you're alone, that you can pull out a prayer book, you can pull out a chumash, and you can fully participate in our heritage. Coming into being Jewish Communities Association of South Africa, it is way later than it should have been. We should have gotten this organization together probably about 15, 20 years ago. What it has done is that for the first time in probably 150 years, we actually have a representative organization that is looking at needs of small Jewish communities. Now, everybody thinks that's just country communities. That is incorrect. We look at communities that have 50 families or less, and many of those communities are on the outskirts of the large metropolitan centers. I remember about a year ago, I was in Cape Town, and Friday night came along, and my son said to me, "Where should we go to shul?" So I said, "Where do you suggest?" He said, "Look, I'm going to take you to a small community that's very much like Kimberley." And he took me to Observatory, and it was like walking into the Kimberley shul, because I walked in, there were 10 or 11 men hanging around, and they looked at me hopefully and said, "Could you daven for us?" And I said, "With pleasure." And there's a saying, and the politician Tony Leon was always very keen on using the expression that it's not the size of the dog, but it's the bark that counts. We are small around South Africa, but we bark very loudly. Wherever you go in small towns, you find that the Jews are at the top of society. They have leadership roles. They are chairman of school governing bodies, chairman of school boards. They serve on all sorts of charitable institutions, and they even make it into the mayoral chambers from time to time, no matter what their political persuasion is. So the country communities, not only in South Africa, but in Southern Africa and Africa, serve a huge role. They have a major role in society. They have a major role in showing the world the good qualities of the Jewish nation of Am Yisrael. I believe that our organization, in reaching out to the small communities, has given hope and strength to a lot of people. And I look forward to working in the new year with Anne, with Rabbi, and with all the other members of in taking this project forward. Before I go, without Rabbi Silberhaft, this would not have been possible. When the Country Communities Division of the SAJBD, the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, closed, it was a huge potential loss to those of us who live in the outback, to keep his going, and we certainly will work with him in the future to enhance that project. One of the things that struck me about small communities in South Africa is that they are the transplants of the shtetls in Russia. And about 6 months ago, I appeared in court in a little town called, used to be called Mafikeng, now called, and driving there's 200 kilometers of absolutely nothing except open fields, open veldt. And I sat in the car driving along, and I thought to myself, this was the view that our ancestors from Russia, coming from the Ukraine, coming from Belarus, would have seen from their ox wagons as they were moving towards the small centers where they would open little shops, or they would become street hawkers or whatever. And they must have felt that they were at home. So we might be a relic, but we are at home. And as Anne's late husband, late Chief Rabbi Harris used to say, stay home or go home or go to Israel. That is the way that I see life. And thank you very much for the opportunity to address you.
Barney, thank you so much for those words. It's very nice. And again, I'm emotional that we're all here together. And of course, here to get words of inspiration for Rosh Hashanah. And thank you for your words, which brings us to the Met inspiration for New Year, the Rabbi Moshe Silberhaft. Moshe, if you can take your screen and put it onto share your screen, and you will be the next speaker.
Thank you very much, Teddy.
Just give me 1 more minute to read the rest of the pages I've got here printed in front of me.
Okay, sorry.
Anyway, no problem, I'm just teasing. Anyway, Rabbi Moshe Silberhaft, an Orthodox rabbi who serves as the spiritual leader and CEO of the African Jewish Congress, Botswana, DRC, Kenya, Lesotho, Madagascar, Mauritius, Mozambique, Namibia, South Africa, Swaziland, Uganda, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and the country communities of South Africa. I hope I didn't miss any. Which makes it very obvious why he's also known as the Travelling Rabbi. Rabbi Silberhaft has an extremely long list of successful appointments and achievements within the Jewish African communities. Thank you for sharing your Rosh Hashanah inspiration with us this evening and bringing together all these communities in Israel, South Africa, and all over the world. Mauritius, Zimbabwe, where else? So again, thank you, and your words of inspiration.
Thank you very much, Teddy, for inviting us and for making all this happen. And to Aviva, thank you very much for putting up with all my back and forth emails, and you're great for putting up with me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, thank you. What can I say? This is an absolute wow. As you said, we have representatives online from Mauritius, Zambia, Zimbabwe, all over South Africa, United Kingdom, Canada, Israel, obviously. And it's really, really great. And it just shows the importance of community, the loyalty and the feeling of people wanting to still be connected to their roots in South Africa, and the good Hamish Jewish community that we have in South Africa. To Rabbi Dorron Kline, who was in school with me, and I hope in his closing message afterwards he's has sympathy on me and mercy on me. But Dorron, it's great to be working with you with Telfed and to be hosted by you guys this evening. So basically, my history goes back to when I was 14 years old and I was at Yeshiva College, and I was invited to travel with Spencer Schwartz and Gary Mindel in those days to a little town called Messina, which is nowadays known as Musina, on the Zimbabwe border. And that's a very long time ago. And since then, for most Chagim of Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, I've been to the Petersburg community in its day when it was vibrant. For a number of years I was there. Utenhage, Bethlehem, White River, Hermanus for a number of years in the old shul, then the new shul. Welcome, Kimberley, a number of years. And this year, please God, I'll be going to Kimberley again for Rosh Hashanah. And I'm always reminded of the story, and my son Yosef is online as well, and he'll remember too, that there was a gentleman by the name of Arnie Roth, who was the head of the Chevra Kadisha, and Barney, obviously he was your colleague. And, you know, we talk about Zoom, and we talk about the spreading Yiddishkeit and sharing things online and through data, etc. But we had a case where Arnie, on first day Rosh Hashanah, we were about to blow shofar, and he said, hang on a second, and he went out of shul, and he dialed a friend of his, a Jewish friend of his that was in Botswana, who was dying, unfortunately, and he asked to hear the shofar before he died. So Arnie went outside the shul, and he phoned his friend, and he came running into the shul with the phone, hands up, the phone in his hand like this, and he said, okay, blow. And Barney will remember that, and Ida, who's Barney's daughter, who's online, will also remember that. It's absolutely pure Judaism when you think about it. It's obviously not halachically correct, but the idea that a man in Botswana somewhere, before he passes, before he returns his neshama to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he wants to hear Tkiyat Shofar. He obviously couldn't get there, and Arnie Roth facilitated that. So that is, to me, inspirational in the sense of being pure Judaism and the pure desire to be connected. Other communities that I spent Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur with over the years, Bulawayo, Hermanus, as I said, a number of years, Bloemfontein, and various other communities. And in these communities, I went as the rabbi, but just as much as I taught, I also learned what it means to live real Yiddishkeit in the real world. So while I went to teach, I also went to learn, because it's very easy, you know, unfortunately, and I'm not pointing fingers, and I can be a little bit, I don't want to, you can fill in the word yourself, Dorron, you can mention the word later if you want, but people today think that Yiddishkeit is Glen Hazel, Santon, and Sea Point. And anything out of that is not really Yiddishkeit. And the reality is that while it is Yiddishkeit, pure Yiddishkeit, and with so many challenges, are in the small community. So when I travel, I go to teach and I go to serve the community and the people, but I also go to learn, which is so very important. And so on this holy occasion of Rosh Hashanah, we Jews are called to sound the shofar, and to gather together and to celebrate the new year, which is the creation of life. And for Am Yisrael, this marks the beginning of the Yamim Noraim, which is a special time for reflection of our past year, and welcome the new year. And please God, this new year, as Anne Harris said, should be one blessed with abundance of strength and wisdom. So it's also a time where we reflect on our Jewish history, from the days of Abraham to our present days, and remember the HaKadosh Baruch Hu's faithfulness to them and to us. And our country communities today represent continuity with that past. For those of you that remember your South African history, Jewish history, we are now 200 years old. The first recognized Jews to come to South Africa were the 1820 settlers, and we're now in the year 2020. And so it's 200 years that South African Jewry has been alive and thrived. And so we're celebrating 200 years of Jewish life. And as we know in South African Jewish history, that when the Jews arrived to the shores of South Africa, looking for a better life, as Barney said, they played vital roles on so many levels in the development of South Africa and the once vibrant communities that they lived in, and the length and breadth of South Africa. And despite the general depopulation of the platteland, which we know has diminished, just like South African Jewry number have diminished drastically, the Jews that still remain in the country communities, as Barney said, are visible in a positive way and play an active role in the towns that they live. And this is so very important. And for those of you that are interested, you can follow us on our activities on Facebook. We have a very active Facebook page called Small Jewish Communities of South Africa, or SJCASA, which is the address, and please feel free to follow along, and you can see what activities we do. And often we have postings, and people from two sides of the world all of a sudden start communicating and saying, oh, we're actually cousins, or I didn't know that you were living here, etc. So it's very important that we use modern technology and Facebook and modern social media for positive purposes. So on Rosh Hashanah, the Kriyat Torah centers around Avraham Avinu, our father Avraham. And I believe the story of Avraham and Sarah helps us to focus on a healing attitude to bolster our spirit in confronting so many of the new challenges invading our lives, from the rise of aggressive anti-Semitism internationally to Corona-19 virus, which has caused so much destruction in its way, in its path. And what does Avraham teach us? Avraham Avinu teach us. The first time Kadosh Baruch Hu speaks to Avraham, what does he say to him? He says, get out, lech lecha, get out of your country, your birthplace, of your father's house, and go to the land that I'll show you. And it continues, as you all know, it says, and I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you'll be blessed. And this is the dream of Avraham that he held in front of him all the years, that energized him to continue and to pursue the promise that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made to him. But we know that following on, reading a little bit more of the parashiyot, etc., we see what actually happened. He married Sarah, and they couldn't have children. Eventually, at age 90, she had a child, and he was he was 100. And they had sorrows, as we know, without going into the whole history. We know what happened to them, and their life, we know, was full of struggles. But despite the wondering and frustration that Avraham did, he was able to accomplish this with the goal that he lived with a dream that HaKadosh Baruch Hu promised him that one day he would become a great nation and that his children would inherit the land to be known as the Holy Land, which is Eretz Yisrael. And so, my friends, what is the teaching for this Rosh Hashanah? That there is always a difference between the dream and the reality. But when challenge sets in, when reality sets in, when disappointment sets in, we lose heart, unfortunately. Our hopes are shattered. But the message is that we should never forget the dream. Once we forget the dream, we'll never be able to handle the reality without the dream. And this message is important this year because, as we know what is happening in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel, Israel is our dream. But once we are there, once we arrive, we know that there are bumps in the road. And the reality is not always that very pretty. And I'm not going to mention the Prime Minister's behavior, etc. But we know that there's a thinking that says that if you don't live in Israel, you have no right to offer an opinion about what is happening there. They say if you want to make a change, come to Israel and you can vote and you can make a change. But the reality today is that the behavior of the people of Israel and the government of Israel directly affect Jews in the rest of the world and the diaspora. And the hugest endeavor of anti-Semites today is to separate the Jew from Israel. So they say, you Jews are fine, you can live in our country, you're great, but your state of Israel, that's apartheid, etc., etc. And that's why we as diaspora Jews have the right to offer an opinion about what is going on there, because that is our dream, to make sure that Eretz Yisrael is not compromised and that we can never be separated from Eretz Yisrael and the Jewish people. And so, my dear friend, so that is my message to you all. You live in Eretz Yisrael, you have the dream, we all have the dream to one day live in Eretz Yisrael. We dream that there should be peace in the world, there should be good health, that Zoom, as greatly successful as it is, Anne Harris and I yesterday and Owen Griffith and a number of other representatives from Africa We're on a World Jewish Congress Zoom conference as well. And one of the people that was making presentations said that his community are so comfortable with Zoom, they don't want to come back to shul, they don't want to get involved, they're so comfortable. If they want to have a shiur, they go online. If they don't, they sit at home, they do a tefillah. So I say, let Zoom not be the doom of the Bet Knesset, of Jewish communal life. And please God, as we begin the Jewish New Year, we pray that we never lose sight of the dream and that we find our way of restoring our belief in HaKadosh Baruch Hu and our blessings for ourselves, for Eretz Yisrael. I wish you all a Shana Tova, K'tiva v'Chatima Tova. Teddy?
Teddy, your microphone's muted. Thank you so much, Rabbi. And thank you, Anne and Barney. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Teddy,
Yes,
where do you go make yourself a coffee and you didn't invite us for coffee?
I was served, excuse me. I asked and I got served. If you'd like, I can ask them to deliver one to you as well. No problem. It was really, thank you so much. We're now going to let anybody unmute themselves and ask any questions and any religious viewed questions they want. Whoever can check on the chat if anybody has already sent a question. And then another 5 or 6 minutes after that, after we get Dorron to speak, we also will allow you to chat amongst yourselves and send blessings amongst yourselves. So.
Somebody asked in the questions if what's happening in Bulawayo this year. I think I saw that.
Yeah, I did see that.
Been done in Bulawayo, Smother. So Bulawayo this year is not having Rosh Hashanah at this stage services because there is curfew 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And also the age of the community is, we are concerned. So Bulawayo and Harare are not having for Rosh Hashanah. Yom Kippur, if the curfew is lifted, there may be morning services for people to join in, but obviously respecting social distancing, as well as the key is not to endanger anybody's lives. So that's Bulawayo and Zimbabwe. My son Yossi Silberhaft has posted the Facebook page, so you can all go under chats and you can find it and you can follow with pleasure. As I said, it's not my private page, it's the page of the Small Jewish Communities Association. There, you'll see often a lot more projects and activities of cemeteries than living people. That is because at the moment we engage less on a one-on-one level with individuals because of the corona, etc. And also you have people in the small communities that prefer not to be on Facebook. So it's not only cemetery projects, but we have also, we meet a lot of people as well. Any questions?
Come on, guys, you were all chatty before. This is the time again to share your video and ask some questions or share anything you'd like to.
But if I can just jump in, if you'll permit me.
Yes, Owen, you may, please feel free.
All right. Well, just greetings to all. So just very quickly. So first of all, we're very privileged in Mauritius that Mauritius is COVID-free. So we're going to have a normal Rosh Hashanah and then later Yom Kippur service. We expect about 80 people at those two functions. So that's just a bit of a news. But now there's a funny sort of story. I guess funny is the word, but maybe it's not. In that we have we're privileged to have two rabbis. We have Rabbi Moshe, of course, who comes and goes, and we have a Chabad rabbi, Rabbi Lema, who normally lives here. Now, he's just come back actually from South Africa, and he's in the government-mandated quarantine. And in the newspaper today, they said that all the families in the government quarantine have been struck with food poisoning, except for one family. And guess which family that was? Rabbi Lema's family, because he brought all his food with him because it was all kosher. That's just a little story to give you. There's some irony there, but otherwise we're all good here.
Well, that's fantastic to hear that Mauritius is absolutely free, and Actually, a couple of months ago, the Israeli government had some plans to let Mauritius be part of our tourist industry and Israel Mauritius, but of course that fell away when we became a red zone instead of a green. Is there anybody
Yes,
else
that's
who
right.
would like to ask a question to maybe to Anne Harris? We are seeing that you're asking us a question, but nobody. Bella, would you like to ask? You're muted, so if you do, you have to unmute yourself. Oh, well. Anyway, so once again, thanks everybody for joining us this evening. It's been a fantastic evening. I want to call on Dorron Kline, CEO of Telfed, a man who is being described as the battery man that never stops. You know those Duracell, the little Duracell bunnies that go and go and go? Dorron's got that personality, and I've never, ever, ever seen his battery run dry. And if it does, he's also entitled to run dry, but kol hakavod to you, Dorron. You're doing a fantastic job. The Telfed has a fantastic outreach to its community, and keep going. Just before Dorron does take over the microphone, I do want to ask you all, and especially the small communities, you are all welcome to join our events. We have events published on the Telfed website. We've already started to plan our December events, but September and October are on the website. All you have to do is go online, register, and the day before the event, you will get an email, or before the event. So please enjoy and join us. Dorron, thank you very much. Unmute yourself, and there you go.
Rabbi, thank you, Teddy, and kol hakavod to you and Aviva, together with Rabbi Moshe and Barney and Anne, putting together such a wonderful evening. And it's been great for me to be part of this. It brought back many memories. As Rabbi Moshe said, we were in the same class together at school. We've grown up together. We still work together. And it's great that that connection is still continuing. You mentioned, Moshe, you mentioned Arnie Roth, who's my cousin, was my cousin, Kimberley. And Kimberley brings back memories because I also was the Chazan in Kimberley. When you were going around to Messina, so I went to Da'ar, the year that you were in Messina. I think I was in Da'ar, and then I was, in my next year, I was in Kimberley. So even when we were at school, already I'd made that connection with Barney, and that connection continued because when I was on Shlichut, and I'd go and visit the country communities together with Rav Moshe. Also, when I traveled down to the youth camps, I was the camp inspector for all of the Zionist youth camps in the Cape. I'd always make sure that we'd either drive down through Kimberley and come up through Bloemfontein, or the other way around. And Barney was always there to greet us and to make sure we had an opportunity to address the community in Kimberley. So really fond memories, and it's great to see that even though the numbers have declined, well, I'm really declined, right? That's Dorron Kline. So if the numbers have declined as declined, I'm still here and still proud of you guys and everything that you're managing to do and keep the flame burning in the country communities. If we also spoke about Zoom, Rav Moshe spoke about that towards the end of his words. Interestingly enough, I've seen a very positive aspect of the Zoom revolution that it's come together with Corona. And although we can see so many negative aspects of COVID-19, there's also positive spin-offs. And one of them was a conversation I had this week with potential Olim from South Africa, was that the couple said that because of Zoom, we've seen that we can keep our business going remotely, and we can be in touch with our friends and family remotely. So we've decided to make Aliyah, because we can now go to Israel and we can still keep the business going and still be in touch with our family remotely. So there's also, from all the new things that come, also connects to Israel and our ability to be able to come to the land of Israel and make Aliyah. I'd like to dedicate a few words to the organization, to Telfed, which is the organization behind today's event. and together with the wonderful people that have put it together, and Teddy being a Telfed volunteer, and Aviva being a Telfed staff member in charge of events and volunteerism and community projects. So Telfed was founded in 1948. So although not like Rabbi Moshe said from 1820, we don't have such a long history, but already in 1948, the South African Zionist Federation set up a branch here. So we're no longer officially connected to the South African Zionist Federation. We've been independent for the last 40 years, but we still carry that name proudly, South African Zionist Federation, Israel. And we were set up to look after the 800 soldiers who came to volunteer to fight in the War of Independence. Those 800 soldiers were all South Africans who fought in World War II. And that's an amazing connection to our history. And a lot of those 800 soldiers who came to fight in the War of Independence and helped the newly established IDF, they were from country communities. They weren't all from, as you know, Joburg, Cape Town. These were not the Sea Point, Sandton, Glen Hazel Jews, right? These were Jews from all over, including many from the country communities that came to assist us. And we owe them a big debt of thanks till today. And since 1948, Telfed's been looking after Southern African Olim in Israel. We have a full-time Klita advisor that makes contact with people pre-Aliyah and also once they've made Aliyah. Ad 120, as long as they live and as long as they need our help, we're here for them. We have a full-time social worker. We provide financial support and social work and social counseling for 450 needy South African Olim every month. That's a total of 2.5 million shekels a year and many hours of counseling. And that's really a very important part of Telfed's job, is not only dealing with the successful Olim, but dealing with those Olim that are having a difficult time. We have a full-time employment advisor who's also a life coach. We also have a career counselor to help people with advice to get their jobs. We provide over 500 scholarships every year, so people can go to university. And for those in Israel now, this is the time to sign up. So tell your children, your grandchildren, remind them that this is the sign-up period for the Telfed scholarships. We have a full-time housing administrator. We're the only Olim organization out of the 23 Olim organizations that provides housing, 105 apartments. And those apartments we subsidize up to 30% below market rates. So it's subsidized rentals. And 70% of the income from those apartments goes to help the needy. So that's one of the ways that we're able to support so many needy Olim. And certainly now during COVID-19, that number has gone up significantly. If normally we were helping about 400, it's now at least 450 a month. And it's these buildings that helps us a lot through the rental. And please God, we'll now be putting up our 4th building on the land that we own in Tel Aviv. Please God, this can be our next project, our 4th building, which will provide more rental income so we can help more needy Olim. We have approximately 90 events every year with 5,000 participants in those events. So in normal times, those events are face-to-face events, and now they've all moved to this virtual platform that we're on now. And I invite you, as Teddy said, to join us at our weekly events. Please, sign up, and there's an event every week with many different and really interesting topics. And if we mentioned Aviva and volunteerism, well, we have over 250 volunteers at Telfed. For every staff member, we have a committee of volunteers. And really, it's those volunteers, Teddy being one of them. Teddy is the chairman of the Aliyah Projects Committee. It's those volunteers that help the organization to do what it's able to do and deal with the community that we're dealing with, which is a community of approximately 40,000 people that we're in touch with. So Telfed has received, because of what we do, 2 awards of government excellence. So you would assume that if we get awards of excellence from the Israeli government, that they would also fund us. That would be a natural assumption. So out of our budgets, 1% of the Telfed budget is funded by the government, 1%.